If you like, the genetics of GTX were placed there, right at the beginning of the product development, shaped by the challenges within the call center, and have allowed GTX to grow into the mature product it is today. These multiple requirements shaped GTX into something that wasn't just a solution to one problem that faced us, but was a solution to a range of problems that would become increasingly valuable as the industry evolved. In any birth, the key genes are set. If you get the decisions and the infrastructure and the architecture wrong to start with, you can never put that right again. What we have seen is the key characteristics have actually grown stronger and broadened. What are these key characteristics? From my position, when I look at GTX and its value in the marketplace, I see three main strengths of the GTX product. Number one, and some people you speak to, this is all they're interested in. Number one, integrating with multiple systems. The way we originally did that was by creating a service object library and a service broker. Number two, business process management. Not application management, not just logic, but the managing of work and the definitions of how that work are done through business processes. Originally, we just put scripts and questions and responses and logic in. But really, the whole interface was being shaped about how a user wants work to be done, not how the underlying systems are forcing you to work. The whole system was repository-driven, where this behavior was put into a central repository. And that opened up a whole range of tools that could be created and built around that model to allow the rapid input and change of these business process definitions. But the third key area, and this is the one that Mike absolutely was brilliant on. I couldn't see this when we first started the product development. Mike insisted on separating the client, making it absolutely thin, presentation only. Probably remote access is the key strength, or one of the key strengths of the product today. Without separating out the presentation to a completely thin client that talked to the server on a single connection, we wouldn't be able to do so many things that we can do today with the product. Remote access isn't just in clients. Today, it's the key to the whole multi-channel strategy that GTX opens up. So let's look at the product. Is this how GTX looks to you? If you take your key systems, your telephony, your customer databases, possibly a billing engine, if you think you just put service objects on top of those systems and write procedures in GTX to access those service objects, that could be where your business logic lies. And then you've got scripts, questions, and forms to manage the actual flow of the work. And then you've got a client to deliver it to your call center agent. If that's how GTX looks to you, you're a couple of years out of date. It's come a long way. The layering and the genes are the same. But what started out as just a service object broker and a set of service object libraries is now a full-blown component model. Inside here, we now have the capability to pass complex structures between objects. We now have the capability for our server to be both a client and a server to other service objects. We have administration tools. We have performance measuring tools. We have the ability to network brokers and distribute these. In here, we also have the ability to link to third-party component models. This area is now very rich. What started off as simple GTX procedures is now evolved into a complete mechanism for managing business logic. Not only have you got GTX procedures now, you have Java procedures. Not only do the GTX procedures work alone, but they can work with parameter passing, they can work in libraries, they can be managed centrally and included in other logic. And on top of that, you've got asynchronous rules to handle events and to handle state changes. You've got every tool you need to develop business logic. And what started off as simple task navigation has now evolved into a whole hierarchical process control system that unifies both workflow and task flow with a rules-driven hierarchy of business processes. And what started out as a simple client for the call center agent is now a range of clients for different platforms. If we actually expand that and have a look at it in more detail, what does it really become in terms of what it does for you? Obviously, the business logic layer is fundamental and is very important. You're probably aware that we've added an HTML client to the system. you may not be aware of the significance of that client. The fact that it allows presentation for the web to be developed and the rest of the infrastructure to stay identical and the same as your call center. Different processes developed for call center agents and web, but in the same infrastructure with the same business logic and the same legacy integration. You're probably aware that we've added the HTML client, but the significance of it maybe hasn't hit home yet. You may also be aware that a range of clients for things like smart telephones using the Epoch operating system from Symbian, which we are able to show you at the conference today. If you want to see GTX running on a Cyan organizer, which is running the Epoch operating system, you've only got to walk down the hall. It's an amazing thing to see. But that's just the first of non-browser-based interactive services terminals. We're in discussion with Sky Television, and British Interactive Broadcasting have given me the all-clear to tell you today that we are working with them on a feasibility project to put the GTX client into the set-top box that within a year and a half will be in about 6 million homes in the UK. This is very, very significant. However, that just lets you access GTX interactive services. You've got a lot of systems within your organization that probably you haven't written service objects for and don't want to. How can GTX reach these? Well, there's now off-the-shelf support for numerous types of middleware. GTX can now call DCOM services directly without you writing a service object. GTX can now call Corba services directly without you writing a service object. GTX can now call Java APIs directly without you writing a service object. But you're probably saying, I've got a whole range of people in my organization that are off doing other things. I've got the people developing in Visual Basic, doing a project off in Nowhere Land. I've got another group developing, that wasn't a slag against Visual Basic. We've got another group of people off developing Java projects, Java servlets under my web server. And right, good to them, that's great. What we've done in GTX now is enable those developers without any reference to the presentation or session management within the GTX client to call into the GTX business logic. This is what GTX has actually become. The openness and sophistication of this framework is now beyond measure. The three characteristics have evolved and matured into something that we believe is of extreme value from an infrastructure sense.